Exodus chapter 6, verses 6 and 7. Does anybody know what those are? Do you know what it is? Exodus chapter 6, verses 6 and 7. No? Okay. Exodus 6, 6 and 7. It's kind of an interesting thought process. You know, one of the things that we have in our mind from popular Christian lore is the concept of the Holy Grail, right? So, can anybody tell me what the Holy Grail is?
Cup Jesus drank from?
The cup Jesus drank from. So at the feast, right? It was Passover at the feast. We call it the Last Supper. You see the big picture, one of the most famous pictures that we get, the Last Supper picture. So we talk about the Holy Grail being the cup that Jesus drank from that night that was passed around, right? Well, the reality of it is though it is kind of Christian lore in that sense, there wouldn't have been one cup that Jesus drank from. Okay, not one, it would have been 4 cups that Jesus drank from. And so technically 3 that he drank from and 1 that was not drunk from at that particular time. There's 4 cups in Jewish tradition. There's 4 cups at the Passover feast that people have. 3 of them drunk from. 1 of them is not to be drunk from until God returns, right? Until all the promises are fulfilled. And so that being said, the cups are representative of a scriptural passage based on promises that God gives. And that scriptural passage is Exodus 6, 6 and 7. And in Exodus 6, 6 and 7, God makes 4 promises. Okay? So he says, I will free you from the yoke of the Egyptians. And that's number 1. Number 2 is I will free you from slavery. Number 3, I will redeem you with outstretched arms and mighty acts of judgment. And number 4, I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God. Okay. I will free you from the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from slavery. I will redeem you with outstretched arms and mighty acts of judgment. I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God. Okay. What's the point? There's no if. There is no if. Remember, this is Moses' time. God said, here's what I'm going to do. This, by the way, is why there are 4 cups. Each of the 4 cups represent the 4 promises that are made. Okay? So the final cup is not drank from during the typical celebration because that's the final promise. And so again, until God comes to take everybody home, then that's not drank from, typically. Okay, but what's the point? It's like crickets in here. Jeez.
He's saying this when
They're still in slavery.
Okay.
God's talking to Moses.
Okay, he's talking to Moses. Okay.
He's saying, hey, go to the Pharaoh and tell him, let my people go. Right? So he's making this promise. He's making this promise to Moses and saying, so remember, I mean, Moses was a stuttering murderer, right? So Moses is a stuttering murderer. Moses, you got the burning bush, you got all this kind of stuff going on. God's like, Moses is like, why? I mean, dude, I'm just a stuttering murderer. And God's like, no, I got you, right? I got you. And by the way, do this, and here's what I promise.
So it's based on if he does something.
It's based on Moses doing what it is that God commanded him to do.
Right, okay.
Right?
That's what I was trying to see.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a prerequisite to that?
The challenge in this that I find, and I've done extensive study of this, and one of the, I will say, a revelation for me has been really what this boils down to. Okay? If you think about it, if you really sit back and think about it, this is the 4 phases of everything. Okay? It boils down to, in life, in finance, in business, of everything that you do in a sense goes through 4 specific phases in order to achieve ultimate success, right? So a lot of times people get kind of mixed up in this, I will free you from the yoke of the Egyptians, I will free you from slavery. And they say, well, wait a minute, the yoke of the Egyptians is slavery and it's the same thing, but it's not. Okay? So this is, I will bring you out of Egypt and free you from the yoke of the Egyptians, right? So number 1 is a physical. But after you have been freed from physical bondage, what has to happen next? You have to be freed from mental bondage. It goes back, I mean, you think about it. I was listening the other day. Pastor was talking about the freeing the women that had been kidnapped and sold into sex trafficking and that kind of stuff, right? And so when you think about those kind of things, in a lot of cases, what's happened is they have been physically beat down to the point where they are now mentally beat down in this particular area, right? So this is, I'm going to get you out of slavery. This is, I'm going to get slavery out of you. Right? Okay. So that leads us, what that leads us to is it leads us to 4 specific phases that we have to go through in anything in order to be truly successful. Phase number 1 is recovery. Recovery. All right? So when we make lots and lots and lots of mistakes, when we have issues, when we have challenges, when we have burdens, when we have bondage, when we have those kind of things, then we have to go through recovery. In fact, if you have been in addiction, the process of removing the addiction from you is called what? Withdrawals is part of it, but that is called. Bradford is it's a recovery treatment center. When you're going through addiction treatment, you're going through recovery, right? So a common word that we hear all the time. So again, when something has been taken from you, your job is to go out and recover it, right? So recovery in this phase is taking someone from scarcity to stability. Scarcity to stability, right? An addict in full-blown addiction. Let's use this one as an example. An addict in full-blown addiction. Take away their drugs. How do they feel? Yeah. Take away their capability of getting drugs. How do they feel? Crazy, right? A person that's in debt up to their eyeballs. How do they feel? Right. Scarcity, right? I can't. We hear that a lot. Scarcity, right? Scarcity is in recovery phase. Scarcity is both a physical situation and a mindset. Okay, so the recovery phase in life is taking us from scarcity to stability. There are plenty of people out there that commonly will say things, I can't afford this. Really? I would argue that that's an excuse in almost every case. If something is high enough priority, a person will find a way, right? The toothless, jobless, homeless crackhead downtown can come up with $20 a day to feed his crack habit. That's $600 a month. Anybody else's excuse is just that, right? So scarcity to stability. Now, in moving through this phase, once you get to the end of the phase, you become stabilized. What does stabilized mean? Okay. You're not where you want to be. You're not completely out of the woods yet, but you are stabilized, right? So if you go into a hospital and a person codes, when a person codes in the hospital, what's the job of the code team? To stabilize them, right? In other words, we're not trying to get them well at that point. We're just trying to keep them alive, right? Okay. So by the end of this particular phase, a person should be stabilized. Now the next phase, number 2 over here, is what we call strategy. Because remember, I will free you from slavery. So this is I will take you out of slavery. The second one is I will take slavery out of you, right? That's completely mental. While the first one is a physical scenario, the second one is a mental scenario. Strategy or strategizing on things is what? Is that physical or mental? Mental. It's mental. So while recovery is physical, getting a person through the withdrawals, removing them from the situation. Again, change their stance so you can change their circum, right? Strategy is completely mental. So this one is stability to security. This, by the way, is why it is that the vast majority of financial programs don't work. Whether it be, don't work for the long term. Crown Financial's Money Map, Dave Ramsey's stuff, all of this stuff, it doesn't really work for the long term, right? It will work for the short term, but there's a difference in making a short-term change and a long-term change, agreed? The short-term change is about behaviors, long-term change is about mindset, okay? So you may be needing to fix the behaviors here you have to fix mindset. So stability to security. The reason why a lot of these things don't work, for example, at Crown Financial's, the big focus with their Money Map program, the Money Map is a budget, right? What good, if a person can't see straight, they have no credit, they're in debt up to their eyeballs, they're not making enough money to pay their monthly bills and all that kind of stuff, what good is it to throw a piece of paper in front of them that says, well, budget out your money and figure it out? It's why it is that 87% of people who have budgets don't stick to them. Okay? It's because they're not ready for it yet. They're still here. A budget is a strategy. Right? So those people need practical steps and hand-holding. Right? Same thing. There's a reason why in AA the 12-step process works if you work the process, right? It works if you work the process because it is practical step by step. It's not a strategy. It's a practical step by step. And then you build strategies, right? So stability to security. In the financial world here, stability says that, okay, I can now at least pay all my bills, right? I've got that. Security says that I'm working towards an emergency fund and those kind of things, okay? Now, once I get a person secure, now they transition to the next phase. I will redeem you with outstretched arms in mighty acts of judgment. That's this in Jewish law is called the cup of redemption, right? So the cup of redemption. Redemption is redeeming. So to redeem is to what?
To redeem is
Okay? It's to build back, right? It's to be, in other words, it's to be made new. Okay? So now I'm, in a sense, whole, right? This I'm not whole. This in the sense I'm whole. Next is I'm building. Okay? So recovery strategy, prosperity. Prosperity is security to success. Success is what? Achieving what you planned. Okay. Hitting a goal. Okay. You feel successful when you set out ideas and goals and you actually achieve those things. That's right. Okay. But success in and of itself, and by most definitions, is actually a little bit selfish. Okay? And it's okay. It's not a problem. This is not a prideful, conceited type selfish. Success is about you and your family. See, this is where people start getting things messed up. Because before their family is taken care of, they start trying to take care of other people. Right? It's kind of like, it kind of goes back to the parents that pull money out of their own 401ks. They draw out of their savings. They pull money from everywhere they can. They take out credit cards and everything else to pay for their kids' college fund because that's what the world says I'm supposed to do. But the Bible says a man that fails to take care of his household is worse than an unbeliever. And in fact, it says in many different spaces that it's your job to take care of yours. It also says take care of your spouse, for your children will eventually grow up and leave you, right? So there are lots of these things. And so again, it goes back to that whole out of order issue. I have to take care of me and mine before I can take care of others. It goes back to the airplane. You sit on an airplane, they start doing that the little face mask thing. Who do they tell to put the face mask on first? Parents or the kids? Yourself. You always put your own on first. Why?
Because you can't help anybody else if you're passed out.
That's right. You can't help anybody if you die from being passed out, right? So it also goes back to when you look at like scriptural hierarchies. It's God first, right? And then you, and then kids. Okay? You got to be taken care of before you can take care of others. All right? So prosperity phase is about making sure that you're taken care of. I will redeem you with outstretched arms and mighty acts of judgment. Well, what are outstretched arms? I mean, physically it's like this, but what's the concept? Okay, help.
Having help and somebody's going to help you support.
Okay, security, help, support, compassion. If I'm standing in a room, and or think about it. Remember them old game shows? You'd stand in the game show, and there was one of them that had this little funnel, right? And so they dropped down cash, and your job was to grab as much as you could, as quickly as you could, right? Yeah. So what do you start out with when you're gathering things? It's outstretched arms, right? So when the process is time for me to gather, I stretch out my arms, right? And I stretch out my arms to gather. So this, I will redeem you with outstretched arms. God said is, come on, right? Same thing in prosperity. It's, come on, I'm gathering, right? That's my gathering phase. What are mighty acts of judgment? What's judgment?
Holding someone accountable.
Okay, holding someone accountable is part of it.
Yeah. Judgment is whatever you deserve, that is what you're going to get.
Okay. Judgment, when we start talking to our kids, or kids get older and start making decisions, boy, you got to use good judgment. Don't make bad decisions, right? Because when you start making bad decisions, what happens to you? Okay, so if I'm looking at prosperity from that aspect right here, I have outstretched arms and mighty acts of judgment. In other words, I am gathering and I need to make good decisions, right? So now I've went from scarcity to stability. I'm now stabilized. I have built some security in my life. Now that I have some security in my life, it's time to gather and learn how to make really good decisions. Okay? Finally, is legacy. Legacy is success to significance. One thing that you will find out once you have a taste of significance, success in and of itself will never be enough again. Okay? Significance becomes addictive. It's a good addiction. Okay? As long as it's used properly. All right? So success is all about you and your family, right? Take care of your household. The man that fails to take care of his household is worse than an unbeliever, right? Take care of yours, take care of your family. What is significance about? Others. Okay? Significance could be about charity. Significance could be about your local community. It could be about the world as a whole. You are now, when you are living in significance, you are living a life that is no longer about you because you're taken care of. You don't have to worry about you anymore. You don't have to worry about your household anymore. Now you're living a life that is full and made for others. But what happens if we get this stuff out of order? What happens if I try to live in significance before my household is taken care of? Okay? It's not going to work. Why?
Order and priority.
Order and priority? Absolutely. See, the problem is and we see this. We see this. We've seen people walk through the door, right? That give and give and give to charity. They give to charity, but they can't even feed themselves anymore. We had a lady that came in a few years back. She was giving 70% of her income to charities. She had gotten on all those little mailing lists, and she felt bad for not sending something when the March of Dimes and the Salvation Army and everybody calls and everybody wants, and you got, the Children's Hospital, and you got this home and that home and this house and that house, and you got all this stuff. And she was on this mailing list. And so she wouldn't send a ton of money to any one of them, but she was supporting like 30 of them. Well, 30 of them bad boys, when you're sending $25 to $50 per, adds up pretty quick, doesn't it? Yeah. So she was sending the largest portion of her income to that. And she was struggling. She couldn't even pay her bills. Why? Because she was out of order. Right? So chaos by definition is lack of order. Right? So when our lives feel like chaos, when our businesses feel like chaos, it's because we have something out of order. So if you look at legacy, success to significance, God says, I will take you to be my people and I will be your God. What's He saying here? I'm going to take care of you. I will take you to be my people. In other words, I don't have needs. I'm God. I don't have needs. So therefore, since I don't have needs, my job is to take care of others. Right? That's where success to significance comes in. Excuse me. Now, what does this mean? It can be applied to anyone, any situation, anywhere, at any time. Meaning,
no matter where you're at in the process, you can still use our help.
there's never an end. Okay, so we talked about these four from a financial standpoint. Look at them from a business standpoint. What does a business in recovery phase look like?
Barely keeping the doors open.
Okay, they may be barely keeping the doors open. They may be keeping the doors open, but they may also be in the red. Right? A business in the red is in recovery mode. Okay? So they're living from scarcity. Now, is it possible? Is it possible to get that business out of scarcity? Of course, as long as they change what they're doing, right? Again, that's a physical situation, so you have to make a physical change, all right? Now, strategy, what does strategy look like in the business world?
Putting a plan into place with action steps.
Okay, so that would be business plans, marketing plans, that would be that kind of stuff. It would also be savings plans. It would be setting growth goals, setting stability goals, setting opportunity goals. It's going to be all of that. Okay, what does prosperity phase look like in the business world?
Location.
Okay, you're profitable. Could be opening up additional location. What else? Growing, hiring additional staff. It could be growing warehouse space. You know, look at somebody like Pat, for example. When Pat first came to us, Pat had one part-time employee. This was 16 months ago. Okay, it was 16 months ago. Pat came to us. He had one part-time employee. Okay, today, matter of fact, on Thursday, he told us that he was hiring his 8th employee. All right. So in this period of time, he's tripled his warehouse space, and he's went from one part-time employee to 8 employees. He has grown significantly, so to the standpoint of he now has more payroll than he's ever had before, but he's making more money than he's ever made before, right? Would you say there's some success in that so far? Is there still room for improvement? Always, right? What does legacy look like in the business world?
You can be able to now employ others to help them, to help others. You can be more significant in the community.
Okay, be more significant in the community. How?
Donate to charity.
All right, so that's where you can donate to charities. You can pick a cause, right? Like Ronald McDonald. McDonald's says Ronald McDonald House. We have several businesses that support things like Children's Hospital, and so they choose a cause and they continuously support that particular cause, right? So that's growing into, there's community outreach programs, there's global outreach programs. Lots of businesses get in that area. But what happens when a company tries to do global outreach programs and they haven't met that level of success yet? Yeah, it can shoot them back into the red, right? It can cause problems. Okay, so you see the 4 steps. Now, that being said, one of the challenges I heard earlier, so talking about the lady that said she wasn't interested, that she does well with her finances and all that, Derwin said something about, how to improve your credit, right? So he's talking to somebody about money coaching, how to improve. Well, what if somebody has great credit? Bad credit, really bad credit falls into which of those 4?
Really bad credit.
Recovery? Okay. So are you saying that we can't do anything for anyone in strategy, prosperity, or legacy phase?
Saying that we cannot do anything?
Is that what you're saying?
No.
So when you mention to somebody about repairing their credit, if they're not telling us that credit is an issue, what are you doing?
Tell them they don't need our services.
You're telling them they don't need our services. You're pigeonholing us. Okay? So the challenge there is not in making generic assumptions about, we help people get out of debt. Well, we help people fix their credit. That getting out of debt and fixing credit is a byproduct of what we do. It's not the active of what we do. It's a byproduct. The active of what we do is we determine where a person is in these 4 steps, in these 4 phases, and then figure out a plan to get them to the next level. Now, is it possible? Is it possible for an individual or a business to be in multiple of these at one time? Got some no's, got some yeses? Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. Have you ever met somebody who makes a really good income? that has poverty mindset? Mm-hmm. You mentioned their name earlier, in fact. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. 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 In fact, they're, as a household, they're actually in 3 different phases all at one time with different pieces. Okay? So it is possible. Is it possible for a company to have a really great business plan and a really great marketing plan, have all kinds of money reserved, in reserve, but actually be going backwards? Yeah. Especially if they're not executing on that particular plan. Market changes, right? If your target market changes and you're not keeping up with those target market changes, you can have a company in legacy phase, by the way, that's immediately thrown back into recovery phase. They may be doing lots of community outreach and that kind of stuff, but then their target market had a significant change, potentially, and threw them completely into the red. We've seen companies go out of business because of that. Because, again, not keeping a good handhold on where the market is at any given point. Does this make sense? Okay. So the issue here is that what we're really looking for when we're looking for people and we're looking at people is we want to look at and see where are they, and then what are the requirements in that particular phase, right? It's why it is that our number one job is to ask as many questions as we possibly can. Because the more questions we can ask, the better off we are. Oh, I do really well at managing my finances. That's great. Would you agree that there's a next level from where you are? Have you hit every financial goal you've ever set for yourself? Did you know that there may be subconscious belief systems that may be holding you back from achieving those goals? What I would suggest you come in, sit down, chat with us for a little bit, and let's see what may be holding you back. Oh, my business is doing all right. I mean, we've been doing this for 30 years. Yeah. All right, keyword. All right, being keyword, right? We've been doing it this way for 30 years. There's another indicator of a problem.
But when they say all right, then that tells you right there they're not satisfied.
Mm-hmm. It should be that they're not satisfied, yeah. Whether they recognize that they're not satisfied or not is the question, right? So again, this is true. This is true, by the way, of relationships as well. So it's our financial lives, it's our business life, it's our relationships, it's everything that we do. Everything goes through these 4. Does this make sense? So when you're looking at yourself, what I would suggest is I would look at the different pieces of your life and say, where am I? And then what needs to happen? By the way, getting from recovery phase to strategy phase cannot happen without help. It cannot happen without help. Okay? It's like a person trying to pull themselves out of addiction on their own. It doesn't happen without help. You got to have the help of others. Support, guidance, got to have that kind of stuff. Getting from the strategy phase to the prosperity phase is possible, but is not likely. Getting from the prosperity phase to the legacy phase is not going to happen without help. Is it possible for a person to give? Yeah, it's possible for a person to give without being prompted, okay? But is it possible for a person to be highly strategic in their giving without help? The reality of it is, remember, you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. Right? So you see those people that say, well, I could do this. And this is where you see problems in this. A person that says, well, I could do this, but they really can't, but they believe they can. Or a person that says, I can't do this, but they can, but they believe they can't. right? So in each of these phases, you're dealing with physical and mental limitations. So what do we have to do? We have to overcome physical situations and mental situations. Absolutely. Does this make sense?
Yeah, yes.
Questions?